All right, good afternoon. I hope you enjoyed your lunch, and I'll shout out again to the amazing folk at the Asylum Seeker Resource Centre who have done our catering for the last 2 days, and hasn't it been delicious? This is the last formal panel session, and I'm sure you're all very glad to hear that because you're all champing at the bit to say something yourselves. I am joined on stage by, of course, Peter Lewis, whom you've got to know well over the last couple of days, Terese Edwards. It's the national... You've changed your name. Yes, sorry.
That's okay. After 50 years, we thought we could include families. So we're Single Mother Families Australia.
Single Mother Families Australia. And Iain Walker, who's the CEO of the New Democracy Foundation. And this is an important part of the discussion here because we're going to talk about how to achieve the change we need. This summit is not the last you'll be hearing from us. This is the beginning of a process that we hope will be ongoing over until we get what we need, which is a better tax and transfer system. So the reason I've asked Terese to join us on this panel is very effective advocate for the people that she represents and has had some real success over the last couple of years with the Albanese government. The restoration of the single parenting payment to mothers and single fathers as well until their eldest child turned 14 from 8, reversing a mistake that was instigated by the Howard government and compounded by the Gillard government, and also ending the very nasty Parents Next program. And I just want Terese to tell us, we're going to finish on notes of hope here, change is possible.
Absolutely. And we're going to do some tea spilling behind the scenes work.
So, Terese, why don't you tell me about that process and what was involved and, the kinds of interventions and advocacy that you were able to bring to bear on that very important issue?
Sure. So, first of all, I live in Adelaide, so I just want to acknowledge our Indigenous leaders and people from the Ghana lands. And I always do a particular acknowledgement to the single mothers, the First Nation single mothers, for their love to community care and culture. So it looks like it was an overnight success, but it wasn't. It took years and years and years and years and years. And so if I distill it down to 3 key points, it was about allies, validity, and framing. So Juanita was who you met here yesterday. One of the journeys that we went on with Juanita, just to give you some background, is I actually did lodge a complaint against the Australian government for their treatment of single mothers to the United Nations. And to do that process, I was the author. Juanita was actually, in their language, the victim. And we lodged that in 2017 because Australia doesn't have a Bill of Rights, so therefore I could not actually take the Australian government to court, which I was hoping to do. So we go back a long way. And so when I talk about allies, I want to also thank you, Emma, because an ally is anyone who provides platform, hope, encouragement, and to be able to be here is really, really important. So just being in the room, you're part of a journey. So there was a lot of work done beforehand, but really the game changer was when the government put me on the Women's Economic Equality Task Force. That door opened up. Our fantastic chair at that time is now our Governor General. And it was 13 women and around 13 eminent, amazing women who got behind me. And so the first recommendation that was made was to restore the parenting payment single to women. And we used a gender lens because we know it is predominantly women in our very stereo-rigid place. And I needed some strong allies because to make any impact, it is not only having the data, the reality, the stories, but also the platform. So you can't, without having all of those parts, it's not going to happen. But we did get it up. And some of the fun things that I'd love to share with you is we held a forum in Parliament House because it looked like something was happening, but it was like trying to catch a ripple in the sea. It was like, yes, no, which one do we hold on to? And so we had women all around Australia that went into their MPs and spoke with them. They knew the facts, how many single parents were living in their area. And we got some money from the Paul Ramsay Foundation, and we flew in 4 women who all live in poverty, never had been in Parliament House before. One was living in a homeless service and one was at risk of homelessness. And that money that we got, we could give to the women beforehand. So they went in with their hair done, their new clothes on. They were looking friggin' awesome. And we had a dinner together, and that dinner involved Anne Summers and Sam Mostyn and all the women, and Cass Goldie flew in. And there was this one moment, and I think we've been talking about democracy, but this summed it up. We're in a restaurant, a Canberra restaurant, and I just walked away a little bit and I took a picture, and there would be not one person that would walk past who would know who was in poverty and who wasn't. And so the resolve of our strong allies, it became deeply personal. They sat and they listened, and they heard the stories about making that $150 go everywhere, for the it's like, look, my new shirt, I haven't had one in 17 years, one woman said. It's the first time I've actually gone to a shop other than an op shop. So these were the people that we had in Parliament House. And we had meetings lined up with ministers, but what happened is we managed to get the tills and the crossbenchers involved. And one woman just said, my youngest child is 8. No, my youngest girl is 6. I've got 2 years before I work out which home I give her to, because I won't be able to keep her when she's 8, because we're already at the risk of homelessness and we're going to lose our money. So those stories were really powerful, but we had data coming out of our ears. It wasn't data, that wasn't enough. And we needed to get the likes of those people that Anne and Sam did, was to knock on the doors with us and beside us. So that made a world of difference. And I actually can remember where I was sitting when I got the news that was getting changed. It was a really life-altering for us. And yesterday I was talking to Andy Sebastian from the Council Single Mothers, and they were talking about that some women still don't know that it's changed, particularly women, First Nations women whose language is not English. So they're on the cusp of just thinking something really shitty is going to happen when their little one turns 8, and then they get told you've got a few more years before that shit kicks in. So that is what did happen, but also not just resting on the laurels. So then after the budget was brought in, I went, of course, to budget lockup. I didn't sleep because my phone kept ringing from women going, is this real? Is this real? And I just went, oh, stuff it. I've got a plane flight back tomorrow night. I'll sleep then. And I just sat, yep, it's real. Yep, it's real. Texting. And so the next day I had my crumpled, those crumpled media releases. And because someone was crazy enough to sponsor me in Parliament House, I just walked the blue carpet and I went in to every office, and anyone who moved, I thanked them. And people aren't used to being thanked. So I was thanking them, and then I must have looked really, really crappy. And I'm sitting in the corner like this, and an advisor came out. She goes, what are you doing? I said, I'm thanking anyone who moves. And then I said is he in? And she goes, yeah. I said, I'd like to go and talk to the Prime Minister. She said, come in. So I went in and chatted to him, and what was so spectacular is on my phone there was a message from a woman who had a little boy who was 7, and she had escaped violence, had travelled across to 2 states for safety, and like every 7-year-old, he's gone, Mum, Mum, and she's gone, oh, I'm talking to Terese, she's just helped us, we're going to stay in our house. And this little voice goes, thank you, Louise, thank you, Louise. And that's the message that the Prime Minister heard, and that's the picture of him that he tweeted with me. And then I sent her back that picture and I said, your little boy's voice was heard by the Prime Minister. So that's how that sort of happened with us.
It was such an incredible moment. I remember going to pick up my daughter at school, and one of her friends, she was 9 when it happened, and her mum had been on the payment and had been booted off it, and I told her, and she looked at me and she said, well, it won't help me because she's already 9. I said, no, it will, and she burst into tears.
Yep.
So you can change things, and it means something. Thank you for your work, and to the amazing Anne Summers and Sam Mostyn and everyone involved, Cass. It was a real moment for me. Not been able to be as involved, but it was incredible.
Well, I think that's a really important point is Travis yesterday gave a shout out to me, and I felt really humbled by it because my hands have been on the envelope for change, but so has so many others. Jenny spoke yesterday, I've got people in the room, so many hands were on that, and I think that is the important part, isn't it, when you work together.
So, now to Iain, who has a different theory of change that he's going to share with you, and the clue's in the name. It's the New Democracy Foundation. You want to think about doing democracy differently.
Thanks for that, Emma. I've just realised how wildly cynical I'm going to come across after this. So
That's okay.
I'm here as a one-trick pony. We believe in citizens' assemblies, citizens' juries. For those not familiar, we're trying to draw a lesson from the court system. If you turn on the news tonight, someone is convicted or acquitted of a terrible crime, you'll probably go, oh, that's fair enough. We trust randomly selected, everyday people to hear a range of evidence, find common ground, and we act on it. Now, I listened to everything yesterday, and a little bit of me, the cynical part, thought, no, are we expecting a magically brave government to occur after April 12th, are we? Is this what we're all expecting? So in the 5 minutes I have with you, there's really one idea I want you to embrace. If we got a room full of people, about 100 people, it's all we can work with in terms of getting people to think, engage and mix. If they were old and young, rich and poor, homeowners and renters, business owners, people on minimum wage and below, unemployed, if you put all those people in a room, if we ask them to meet one Saturday a month for 6 or 7 months, they can ask for any expertise they want. They can ask for any question, any costing. And there's one threshold for what goes through to the government. It's that 80% of the room can agree to it. The problem I'm trying to solve in this organisation is that there's the rule in, rule out game. There's that fear of being the first to raise, we might vary tax X, and everyone goes bananas. Completely misreading the audience. I'm going to use an anecdote that was given to me by Nick Greiner on my first day in this job. And he said to me, do you know there's no one in politics anywhere in the country who thinks what we do with prisons actually works? He said, it's a disaster. And he said, as Premier, I was a bit bull at a gate. I went at everything and I didn't have the courage to go at that because every advisor, every friend, every colleague, everyone said, don't do it, it's suicide. Do you know why I help you out? Because with my time again, I would ask a jury of citizens, what should we do with people convicted of a crime? And my range of options in politics goes from fitting in a matchbox to hearing where people can find common ground, and I get to shop from a bigger bucket of options. I've used that analogy because hopefully you can see the parallel to tax. We have consistent, ultra small target conversations, and it's rational. If my job, if your job, depended on a popularity contest of 100,000 people who hadn't been paying a whole lot of attention, I think we'd do it differently. We'd worry about the announceable. We'd worry about the optics. We certainly wouldn't want to ruffle any figures. We'd avoid hard conversations. The jury system works because, bluntly, there are no donors. There are no lobbyists. These people don't know each other before they meet, so there's no factionalisation. They act on what they think is right and what they can live with, and they go back to their lives. We have professionalised politics. I'm not arguing for the revolution that maybe some in this audience might argue for. I'm arguing for a balancing. Can we put this on the side and start the tax conversation with a jury of citizens? Simply ask them, how can our tax system be fairer and more efficient? Let's give them the 6 or 7 months, and that will empower whoever is in government afterwards to say, the range of options that people like is bigger than we thought. That's really the one point I wanted to land with you today. People often look at why is there so much division? That's not a bug, that's a feature. If you're in politics, that's a great way to mobilise voters to your side, regardless of the side. It's an analogy, a little saying I use too much. A government can come out tomorrow and announce free chocolate bars for everyone, and an opposition worth their salt will line up the lactose intolerant, the Carob Producers Association. They will find an opposing voice. We only get past that reform when the most powerful asset in politics, regular people, so powerful that political parties tend to fake it on occasion. But if we can put that asset and have people saying, oh, we've looked at this, there's some upsides and downsides and this is fair enough, only with that will we advance the tax debate. And I think for anyone who's a community organisation or activist in this room, you are going to get a better hearing from 100 people we pick at random than from the existing structures we have in place. So I hope it's an idea you can engage with, and it's a new way to start to approach can we do politics a little better. Thank you.
Thanks, Iain. I'm going to go to Peter first, but Terese will play your video after that. It's ready now. So, Peter, go ahead.
So I'm going to yes and Iain, I think. So I'd love to finish this by saying if we just all go away from today and go back to our organisations and get them all to say that tax is the number one issue for the next 2 years and convince funders that tax is the number one issue for the next 2 years and build a campaign and get petitions and get people angry about how terrible it is that we would get meaningful change, I'd be lying to you. Like, I just think we're at now the point where progressive political campaigning is fundamentally broken, and I agree it's a feature, not a bug. I think there's a bigger bug than just politics. I think we have entered the era where we have ceded our civic spaces to the big tech companies that are driven on algorithms driven by division. And what you end up is that information that is loud and outrageous and creates conflict goes further and faster, and considered discussion like we've been having doesn't work on the algorithms. And that's created perverse incentives in the way politicians operate, in the way media operates, and in the way, to be honest, civil society operates as well. Any organisations whose theory of change is pumping money into Mark Zuckerberg's pocket or getting really good at TikTok is basically just working in the system that is creating the conflict, attention, dystopia that we are now facing. So one of the reasons, thank you. Georgians, I know that you would agree with me. One of the reasons I set up the centre of the public square with Emma at Capita is I think we've got to change the way we do build civic infrastructure and a process where we start with the point of connection, not the point of conflict. And, you know, I'm not coming here as somebody who hasn't got blood on my hands. I've worked in the union movement for 30 years. Anger, hope, action. Get people angry, hope it can be better, and get them to get noisy and loud. The problem is everything requires you finding the enemy. It means you've got to give people the sugar hit of conflict, and then at the end of it, you've got to make the change sustainable, and it rarely is. So what do we do with that? the process I'm thinking through is, and we're modelling it in a couple of different areas, but I think this is an interesting area to do it, where you've got diverse stakeholders. Start with what we agree on. So today is, and the last 2 days has really been about marking some pieces. So what do we agree on as a starting point? Then the second point is then work with organisations to investigate if our assumptions are right and see if there are points of friction. Stories are really important. Stories are the engines that drive it around. So running investigations with organisations to build up the bank of lived people's stories that actually brings the policy to life. Once we've got there, then find a way of deliberating and bringing, I wish New Democracy nothing but success, but I also think if your only deliberation is big capital D ones that take 6 months, the gap from business as usual to a citizen's jury is too far. How do we make deliberation part of what organisations do every day? How do we use the tools we've been trying to do today, creating feedback loops that are simple and easy to access? How do we make that business as usual? And then out of that, once we've gone through a process where we reach a position where there is effectively a social license within a community, that's when we go and start activating and going and trying to build support for our proposition. So I think the idea that I'm working with is the idea of building dialogues that have those 4 bits. The starting point we agree on, the investigation, the deliberation, and then the activation. And to think through how maybe with some of the organisations that participated here, we can flesh out that concept, I think is a better theory of change than just getting everyone angry about how shit everything is.
Well said, Peter. A couple of reflections from me.
Do you want to respond?
I'm going to respond. I think I agree with the limitations of the anger, hope, action approach, particularly when it comes to complex issues like tax reform. I think, and because of the rise of social media and the way that it's allowed us to devolve into tribes that, look and sound like us, and we make little communities online and throw bombs at each other, there's a lot more focus on anger than there is on hope at the moment. And that's across our society. I think that for all of the good intentions of minor parties and crossbench parties, the message that the 2 major parties are no different from one another has been profoundly damaging to our democracy. There is a difference when it comes to things like action on climate and gender equality and the incomes of low-paid people. There is a profound difference. There are many very educated, very intelligent people who think they can take ideology out of politics. You can't. Everyone has an ideology, whether they think they do or not. I know a lot of people that think they don't, and they're wrong. And usually the way that they tell me they don't have an ideology reveals their ideology very quickly, which is they're very happy with the status quo because it's working for them. The fact is, change is made when enough people come together and say, this is not working and we need to do things differently. And that means challenging the status quo. Now, it's true, I've worked as an advisor in Parliament for almost 5 years, and the opposition spokesperson for the portfolio I was in at the time was Malcolm Turnbull. And he gave me the nickname Miss Non-Contro, which meant I got more pieces of legislation through by negotiating before it even got to the Parliament floor, so it didn't even go to a vote, than just about any other advisor in the building. So negotiation and the passage of legislation on a non-partisan basis is actually how the majority of things get done. But when it comes to the big changes, how we treat people in poverty, how we tackle climate change, how we ensure that the housing market starts being a source of shelter rather than a source of wealth building, then those are ideological contests, and you have to pick a side. That doesn't mean we don't work across the aisle, of course we do, and that doesn't mean we try to find points of connection and points of agreement and grab the low-hanging fruit first, of course we do. But my concern, and I've said this to Ian, it's not a surprise to him, I think citizens' juries are great. They work very well in Ireland on abortion law reform, for example. They tend to work very well on cultural issues. But on something like tax reform, you're going to get a very compromised outcome. Because if you're going to try to find something that the majority of people agree on, it's going to be low-hanging fruit. And this is a bigger challenge than that.
And I'm jumping in because I agree with you, because the orthodoxy has not treated women well. Let's be really clear about it. They're like, yesterday when Travis was talking about the tax system, set up in 1940 after the First World War. In 1942, in Social Security, women who were not married did not get a cent. And that allowed the market forces to come in and take their babies. That's where forced adoption has come from. It was not until 1973 that there was even any equity in the system. Now we've got this shitty bloody child support system, which I've got a video on, where women have to go and say, I want you to pay me child support, and you go, well, I'll give you a couple of bucks, and we stay tethered and you will control me for years. So I agree, because unless there is greater gender equity, and with the domestic violence, the orthodoxy is a worry for me.
Now, I just want to clarify one thing. When I say pick a side, I'm not saying pick a major party. I'm saying which side of the tax debate are you on, and find your allies. Don't expect that someone that's doing very well out of the current system is, out of the goodness of their heart, going to do what you want. That's what I'm saying.
But also, I think the other bit we need to be honest with ourselves is we can't just go to government and expect them to fix things all the time. We need to build... the elephant in the room is civil society is weak. People don't join organisations. Instead, organisations rely on philanthropists to fund them. The risk is it becomes a bonsai movement of Potemkin villages. How do we actually engage with the people we claim to represent in order to build the power? That's what countervailing power is meant to be about. And until we use issues like tax to actually build our structures as civil society, I fear it becomes very transactional, and maybe convincing 100 people in a jury becomes our best bet.
So there's about 7 questions that popped up rapid fire there, which I'm going to try and cover in one sentence each. When I randomly select a group, lottery selection, stratified match to the census, it is 50-50 by gender. I would argue even equally importantly, getting people from all walks of life, blue collar, white collar, no collar, does not happen in our parliaments. We have a Liberal Party that's not particularly liberal. We've got a Labor Party that has probably never had dirt under its nails. We get people in those jobs in the room. That generates a very different result. Peter, you mentioned, I can't read my own writing these days. You mentioned social media. Our politics is a public opinion machine. Okay, it does respond on what you do in the next 5 seconds and give you an emotional response. The social media companies built a giant public opinion magnifier. That's why our elections get worse. Politicians have always gone to a childcare centre because they love kitties and you love kitties. They've cuddled a koala because you love the environment, I love the environment. And we got used to that. Okay, you're saying different things to different audiences. Now with social media, I can say a million things differently to a million people and we can't see it. Elections are going to get hard to run. To your contention, and great to have different views. You know the analogy about bacon and eggs? The chicken is interested, but the pig is committed. I'm going to take a pig commitment out of here. Let us run a $3 million experiment, whoever is in the next federal government. We'll run a citizens' assembly on tax. If this doesn't work, if your contention holds true, I'm done. I'm out of a job, the organisation ends. But if we're right, and we have a sensible adult conversation about tax, can we as a country go, you know what, $3 million once a year, twice a term to address a hard issue to get everyday people in, that's not a bad spend. And that's the bet we're putting out there. Our greatest concern, look, it's out there. The crossbench like this. The Greens kind of like this as well. And it's the major parties. If we end up with a hung parliament, Will they say yes to it? My message is, my reason for coming, there's nothing to fear from listening to people. You're not bound. Your box of options is getting bigger, not smaller. So that turned into a really long answer to a short question. But hopefully you're seeing that in our democracy, we've got to innovate and try new things. And if we fail, let us fail. It's one experiment.
A compelling point. My response to
doing
that
a $3
would
million
be,
pitch like that too. That's awesome.
My only response to that would be, we haven't got time to experiment and fail. There are lives on the line, and it's another term of parliament in which we could get nowhere. And that for us might be okay, right? But for a child that's living in poverty, it's not okay. And so I'm not saying don't do it, but I don't think we put all those eggs in that basket. I think that there are tried and tested ways of making change in a social democratic system. The system we have got is not going anywhere in a hurry. It doesn't matter how many crossbench MPs are elected at the next parliament. Our constitution maintains that only those that control the most seats on the House of Representatives have any hands on the budget. And even if the Teals hold the balance of power, or the Greens hold the balance of power, they can't move a money bill. You can't move a money bill in the Senate. It has to be moved by the government of the day. We have to be realistic about the structures that we're working in. It would be lovely to change the whole world, but I'm not willing to sacrifice one more generation until we get there. Last comments, and then we're going to play Terese's video, because we have been talking about storytelling and it's really important.
We can do both. By all means, pursue yours.
Sure.
You pursue your approach.
Has to be both.
I don't think they're mutually exclusive at all. Like, I think that we need to find ways of bringing as many pressure points as we can, and it's a great part of the toolkit.
Pressure points, yeah.
Sure, and that's basically what I'm saying. Let's do it, but let's get on with it either way. Like on all fronts, let's get on with what we need to do to make change.
I'm slight shifting towards you. A slight.
I'm not Chicken Little, contrary to all appearances. Our democratic system, look, we live in a pretty good place. You mentioned, I've forgotten the nickname you were given. Yeah, I want to be Mr. Contro. I want the ugliest 10% of issues to run through a citizens' assembly. That's it. And where we differ, yeah, I think there's a triumph of hope over experience if you think that whoever is in power with control over the money bills goes, well, we're going to have that hard conversation about capital gains tax exemptions, about negative gearing. No, they're not. They're not. It's not going to happen. You can ride a unicorn to Canberra. It's not going to happen. With a citizens' assembly, if we ask them an open question, it goes where it goes, but they will not be limited by the fear of re-election, and that's a benefit to our democratic system.
So what we're trying to do here, obviously, is create the groundswell in the community to take that fear of losing the election away, to show our elected leaders that there are more of us that want change and need change than there are of the very powerful people at the top. And that they are actually accountable to us. A citizens' jury might be one way of exposing some of those issues and what people think. I think you have to be very careful about who participates. And a note of caution, when I asked people to come and speak at this event, none of the white men said no. They all went, yeah, sure. Many, many women and people of colour when I don't know enough about tax, I don't feel comfortable talking about that. People will self-select, so you've got to be careful about how you select them. But having said that, we're building a movement. Let's watch Terese's video, and then we're going to have a final few questions from the floor, and then we're going to do a wrap-up like we did yesterday.
Thank you. I think this will just show another way. Well, our way.
What a great example of really compelling storytelling that was. Thank you for sharing it, Terese.
I just want to share one thing. So the person who made that video is in the room, and how we did it. So you were talking about $3 million. If I get $3,000, I think I'm rich. And so how we got that video is I asked women to trust me enough to send me their screenshots of debt, and we just cropped their name out, and so talking about stories and validity, we've got women who are just going, yes, this is my shitty debt that I get every month. I've now put it to good use. So and it brings power along. It gives power back to the person who was powerless, and they see them as part of a collective, not the brightest collective, but also with the framing. We wanted to let it know what could be happening. So it was not done on anything other than, I think, a few $100. That's how we made that video.
What incredible value for money. Thank you. Can I just, someone has sent a comment, a fact check on me, and they're quite right, actually. I said that independent MPs can't move money bills. Anyone in the lower house can move a money bill, but only a government minister can make a budget appropriation, is the point I was making. So if you look, for example, at the National Anti-Corruption Commission, it would have had the numbers in Parliament in any minority government, but it has to be funded by the government of the day. And so you do need government commitments to make any changes to our tax system. That's the point I was making very badly. Okay, couple of questions. I'm going to start with this one. Is joining a political party still a viable way to make change?
I saw some shakes. I think joining anything is a viable way to make change. I don't care what people join, but joining things is about how you rebuild countervailing power. And yeah, the party structures are sclerotic, and they're sclerotic because people don't join, and there is, a death spiral there. It's a shitty experience, and only the people that want to accrue out of it turn up to the party, and you don't want to go to that sort of party. But, I think it's really interesting, the volunteer networks the Teals are building around compelling independent candidates. I think if the major parties survive, they'll look for more candidates that can do that rather than, outsourcing all their community to institutions and head office. I think getting involved is really, really important.
I agree. I don't think it has to be a political party, but I do think it has to be a force of numbers if we're going to defeat the power of money. We are many, they are few.
There used to be all these things like progress associations and precinct committees and chambers of commerce and the sports clubs, like the things that people are now just a little constituent of one staring into their screen, and that's not and they can feel connected, but it's not a real connection. It's not a connection that builds any power. It's a connection that actually takes power away.
Okay, this one's for you, Iain. Sorry, I've lost it. Constitutional conferences have been like citizens' assemblies, but they've still resulted in referendum failing. Why would a citizens' assembly be any different?
Sure. The core element behind this is lottery selection. So anytime you have a constitutional convention, you put the great and the good in the room, it comes down to who do you trust. You're most likely to trust people with a job like you, people with a background like you, something where you've got an affinity. And if you see purely the great and the good on stage, appreciating the irony of that comment in this context, you sit there going, I don't trust that. What happened in Ireland, for those not familiar, you actually had a centre-right government that thought they'd had a lot of controversy. Abortion was banned, women travelled to the UK, to London, and ladies died en route. So it became a political controversy. We have to do something. As politically complex decisions go, how do you feel about reforming abortion law in Ireland with a right to life in the Constitution and the church as the single most powerful public voice? Any politician we speak to, right or left, just turns to me and goes, that's awful. Why did it go differently? Because with a citizens' assembly format that runs across months, you get to meet the people. So it's not mandatory, but about 80, 90% of people are happy to be in the media. That referendum ultimately passed 68-32. 40% of people exit polled could name something that assembly said. We funded a documentary and behind it, and one of the most persuasive things was he was a 60-year-old bloke. He was a truck driver from County Cork. I won't do the accent, but he simply said, look, I've always hated this topic. I've always hated to engage with it. And when I learnt that 320 women died, I learnt that I had to get over that. That coming from a truck driver in County Cork is more persuasive than coming from an advocate, from a politician, from a doctor. I am not saying ignore expertise. I'm saying expertise should be on tap but not on top, and that's why it's persuasive. If those people with expertise, like we've heard all yesterday, make their case to people you can connect with, it becomes more persuasive. So that's how I think we get a very different outcome.
Can I just say one thing? I look at things as analogies, and the way I'm trying to think through how we rebuild things is we've got to think about the town hall and the town square, and it feels like we're talking here about the courthouse, and I think it fits in there. But if we neglect the town hall and the town square, like the town hall being how we get groups like this building consensus so that we don't just all come and hear a few speeches and go home and go, I wonder what happened with that. And a town square, how do we actually create broader discussions that go out into the different communities we work? Like, I don't want to give it, I don't think we've got the suite to take to court yet. And I think there might be a point where we do, at which point it would be great to get everyone, a cross-section, passing judgment. But I also feel like the first step is to actually solidify this proposition and bring it to life, and not just put it into a process where it's out of our hands.
Okay. Quick.
So I agree with you. We're a little organisation, so we focus on one piece and we try to do it well.
Yeah.
There's absolutely a complementary model. You should look at the City of Madrid, created a platform called Decide Madrid. And this is really simple. You're a citizen or a community group, you lodged your idea, and it gets judged by a jury of your peers.
Taiwan does it too.
And
Do in Taiwan.
The veto one is all self-selected though, and if I got arrested tonight, I wouldn't want to go before a self-selected jury. That would be terrifying. So I think it's the blend of everyone should have a say, but you get a better hearing from a jury of citizens.
This isn't a question, but I'm going to read it out because it's great. Why aren't we just putting single mums and people with experience of poverty in charge of Treasury and the ATO? We can be confident they'll manage the money well and bring much needed lived experience. And that's come from Alex. Where are you, Alex? Are you here in the room? No.
I think she was here yesterday.
Yeah.
She also did a shout out.
Economic Media Centre provides free media training for people with lived experience to get more diverse voices into economic policy debates. They're a great outfit. Get in touch with the Economic Media Centre. That was a plug for them. Okay. The rest of the questions here are sort of on a very similar theme.
Can I just mention Treasury? Just to show some of the power. So I was talking to Peter Davison before, who mentioned that child support has not been spoken about in a public space in Parliament for 20 years. We took a forum there and the room was packed. The advisors were there. People were hanging off the rafters. But on Wednesday, I had a meeting with Treasury and the Assistant Treasury, and they just said to me, you don't need to convince us anymore. We now want to work with you on what we can actually start to change. So that was pretty damn exciting. And it was one of the reasons, thanks so much for persevering with the video, because it was one of the reasons why I wanted to show it, is because we've taken probably the most thorniest issue, because we can talk about domestic violence, we can talk about poverty because of a lot of work that's happened, but we don't talk about the blocks in the taxation system that are weaponised and harmed by those who feel it the most in their pocket. So I think I'm not suggesting that this is the only way to do it, and I'm not knocking other ways. I think I'm just saying that I'm being really pragmatic in dealing with the hand that I've got at the moment and how we get something through.
Yeah, and congratulations and thank you for your persistence. It's incredibly valuable. I'm going to read 3 questions and then we can answer all of them in our last bit of discussion because they're very similar. So firstly, when will the discussion focus on strategy and strategic clarity and how that can build the loads of determination that's needed to defeat opposition instead of relying on the vacuity of hope? There's another one in the similar vein. Thanks for presenting a range of tactics. How do we design a strategy that creates a unified movement for change? And here's a handball for you, Dorothy Dixer for you, Pete. It seems like Peter's micro-organising model of having majority small conversation can take forward change with every walk of life, including competing views. Isn't this what we need?
Look, I think we
He's
start
gonna say
with.
yes.
I think we start with the starting point is that the sign of madness is to keep doing the same thing over and over again and thinking you're going to get a different result. And I look at a warrior like Cass, who's been running so hard on Raise the Rate for so long, and to just think that the next government is going to be different because there's a slightly different configuration in a minority, best case scenario, there's a minority progressive government, and God forbid, there could be a lot of other outcomes apart from that. So, and I think my sense is this issue is so broad that the various ideas aren't quite there yet, but the need, like I think what we can agree on is the system is not working, and then work it from there and make it a priority in different organisations. And then, yes, almost flip it on its head. Rather than the experts coming up with the policy and convincing people that's going to solve their problems, let's flip it on their head and build it from the ground up and develop the tools to do that, and have a commitment to bringing those stories in, because they're the fuel that make campaigns move.
And that chimes with a comment that's just come in. Deliberative direct democracy starts in your community. Build power locally and take it national. This session is important, and we weren't going to give you all the answers today. The reason we're doing this summit and the work that will follow it is to try to build this movement for change, and that should include a citizens' assembly. I can't fund it, I wish I could. It should include the hard shoe leather work of people like Terese and her colleagues that pound the blue carpets and make change now. It should include joining a political party or joining a civics organisation or a local organisation. All of the above is my answer. We must recognise that this is a big national challenge, but it's on all of us. And rather than continuing to be so cynical as to say nothing's going to change, they're never going to do it, they're too scared, they're all the same as each other. The actual truth, and it's not a popular or fashionable truth, is that most people go into politics because they want to make a difference for their country. They may have very different ideas of what the outcome should be, and even more different ideas of how to get there. But the vast majority of people that go into politics are at heart good people that want to make a difference. And we must meet them in good faith. We must recognise that under our constitution we're not going to get another system of government anytime soon. We need more voices, need more diverse voices in the debate. As I've said all along, I think what the Teals have done, and Legis Bender in particular, that's exactly the kind of work the crossbench should be doing. And I give her a lot of credit for that. But ultimately, we will make the change we need only through the parliamentary process. So we intend to keep working with all of you on different methods of making that happen. And as we are wrapping up this panel, I will thank very much Iain Walker, not just for being here and for the work you do with New Democracy and thinking differently about things, because I think it's really important. We agreed we were going to have an argument up here, by the way. I didn't drop it on him. But also for your support of us here today and your generous support of our event. Terese, again, thank you for the work that you've done and that you continue to do, and all of you in the single parents movement, you have my heart. And Pete, love your work. Thank you very much.
So let's do a little bit of reflection before we wind up, and we are going to do the room. I'm really interested to hear from people about what they want to take away from the end of it. But remember we asked this question yesterday, how confident are you that we have the right policies, the community support and the political will? Just remark again, I'm interested in if anything shifted, whether we feel better or we feel worse, or nothing's really changed. It's just been 2 days of fantastic conversation. If people don't have the QR code, the program's somewhere we can go back. I hope you've all got it now. And Ariane, who's online, might even, if she is listening in, help us remember what the old slide, or Jeff, you could probably pull out the original slide, sorry, from yesterday, and then compare it, see if we've moved it all. I felt like everything was under 50%, or under 5 yesterday, but it feels like it's up a little bit, all 22. Give it a couple more minutes. I reckon political will's gone down and everything else has gone up. Anyway, maybe you're just a more cynical crowd who have hung around. One more, or we're still moving. As long as we're moving, it's always exciting. I guess you could bet on it, couldn't you? To address inequality. Well, do you feel like after the discussion we're closer to it? So we've been talking about policy. Oh, of course not. No. We've got the policies exist somewhere. Oh, people want to change their vote now. Sorry, it's too late. You can only vote once. Okay. We will go back and see where it was. I'm not going to make, unless Jeff's been magic. Jeff is magic, by the way. Actually, a big hand for Jeff and the team. It's just been terrific. Jeff and I have been working on a number of these sorts of events. I'd be kicked out of the Consultants Union if I didn't say we do weddings, parties, anything. If you ever want a live interactive experience, Jeff is your man to call. Yeah?
So the right policies to address inequality was at 2.5. The community support to address inequality was at 5. And the political will was at 1.7.
Oh, we've gone up all the way. So we've moved, at least we've moved the vibes of the room around, which is really good. One more question. So in a binary, I think this is our last 100 points. So what do we think? In terms of the weight, do we focus our limited time and resources on patching up the system we have, or fundamental? It doesn't say root and branch. It does it? Root and branch, that's kind of tax bingo, isn't it? Yeah, drink. Root and branch reform. Sounds like gardening. The line, one of the lines is very light, but we can see it from the number. So yeah, it's about, I think the feeling is it's the big change, not the little change, and maybe little wins to prove the big win. I'm not calling Teresa's a little win, but she did have a significant win in a shitty system, but it's the system as it exists at the moment. Very good. And finally, and this is just where you earn your time at the mic. Any final thoughts? So you can either share them in or just do what we did yesterday and put our hands up. I see a lot of... Okay, you can have one mic you're running.
Thanks. Warwick Smith, Centre for Policy Development. I just wanted to share something we've been working on for a while at Centre for Policy Development, which is advocating for a national conversation for the Australia that we want for ourselves and for future generations. And we've been working with the Treasurer and with the Treasurer's office on this, and it, there's an open door still there for this, potentially for this in the next Parliament. And it was also part of the Private Members Bill, the Future Generations Private Members Bill that was tabled on Monday by Sophie Scomps and Bridget Archer. So as part of that bill as well was this national conversation, and this sort of potentially brings this values conversation that we're all talking about. Where are we trying to go? What are we trying to do? And what's the democratic sort of legitimacy of that? If we have a sort of multi-methods national conversation about the Australia that we want. So, you know, deliberative processes would absolutely be part of that. So would kitchen table conversations and town hall meetings and postcards from school kids and, you know, just all sorts of different ways over a long period of time. It involves a lot of people. It gets buy-in from the people into what we're trying to do. And then you can design policies that are trying to achieve those aims. So I think there's sort of democratic legitimacy element there.
I think that's really fantastic to know it's happening, and also kind of scary to have not known it was happening.
Why didn't you know it was happening?
Hey?
Commissioner for Future Generations, it's huge.
But I also think it's interesting way in. Like, I'm not 100% sure that tax is the entry point into this conversation. I love that quote, tax is the price of a civilised society. So is the discussion about a civilised society, and then the tax is the way to deliver on that. So, yeah, thanks for it.
Okay,
Approximately 15 years ago, Johan Rockström published the 9 planetary boundaries. Climate change was only one of them. Planetary boundaries are where the human beings are having an effect on the environment. We've transgressed 6 of those 9 planetary boundaries. I think we're in deep trouble. Around 2015, the United Nations agreed to the Sustainability Development Goals, 17 of them. Too many. And if you move on, the Club of Rome around 2023 published Earth for All. And in that Earth for All, they had 5 actions that were needed. Surprise, surprise, energy was one of them. Food, sustainable food was a second one. But the other 3 were a real surprise to me. They were social. Poverty, inequality, and empowerment, particularly of women. Those needed to be addressed before the others would progress.
excellent
Thank
point.
you.
Thank you. Helen, I'm coming up to Helen and then I'll come back down to you. Oh, you go first.
We've got 2 mics here. You go.
This one. Hi, thanks. I just wanted to reflect on representation and the fact that Australia is now such a diverse country in terms of multicultural communities coming in. And what I have noticed living, to give context, I married a very white colonized family into a very white family. And when I speak to migrants, there is this sense of gratitude of being allowed to live in this country, and especially, and also with refugees, this gratitude of being given access to this modern, beautiful land. What we don't realize is that we are economic migrants or forcibly displaced because of colonization. And when I speak to migrant communities, they kind of tend to go with the liberal government or with that rhetoric of economic, we need economic and we need, it's all about financial independence and all of that, because they feel the sense of gratitude of being allowed to come here. And then I speak to them and they don't align themselves with First Nation sovereignty, for example, because they're like, I am in a country which is giving me a better life, which my country couldn't. But what we don't understand is that we are here because of colonization. So the point I'm making is, and I invite everybody in this room, when we say community mobilization, talking to community, grassroots level activation, there's a lot of apathy and a fake sense of this gratitude towards the way of working of this country, which makes us align with those values which are not socialist values, which are not collective values. And I challenge everybody in this room, when you go out in your community and you speak to migrants, understand underlying the motivation behind that apathy. We don't participate in politics as much. So many women I speak with, they're like, politics is not something we want to get involved in. And that's where I challenge them and encourage them. Politics is personal. And that's what I'm inviting everybody in this room to do. When you speak to people from other backgrounds, understand that second level of nuance there and challenge it and make them participate in politics, because the power is there.
Well said.
Okay, I'd just like to relay a conversation that I had at one of the breaks about what steps are next. How do we build on this? And this is more about tactics and what can we do now. Now, it's true, I understand that all this will be collated, there'll be some sort of paper that's got out, but what we need to be doing is to start speaking with not one voice, but a unified voice on a range of issues. So when we do pre-budget submissions, make sure you've got some lines in there about how you think we can start to change the tax system to fund some of the things you're asking for. Work tax into all of that. Make Treasury and the people who read the submissions realise that there is a voice out there. We understand we can't have everything we ask for unless there are some changes to fund it. So let's think about how we're going to have it funded, but speak with one voice so that there's this common understanding coming through civil society that we're focusing on inequality, and the way to deal with inequality is to look at wealth taxes and to look at those sorts of issues. So that's a challenge in a sense. The next piece of work that needs to happen should include a networking piece so that we are in communication with each other and we understand what we are saying so that we can continue to speak together.
Thanks, Helen. I'll speak to that shortly. Over here. Okay, Cass first.
Yeah, thank you so much, Craig Malcolm. Look, community is a social place, having a sense of human connectedness, called upon by family, friends, neighbourhoods, association, clubs, civic groups, enterprises, church, ethnic organisations, temple schools, local unions, local governments and media, and music hasn't been mentioned here today, ladies and gentlemen. We, the Far South Coast Community United Unions and the Maritime Union of Australia, are about unity in the community. That's how it works. You live in the answer, the problem goes away. One, you need access to influence, to power, then you provide change within that critical timing and execute it. That's how it rolls, and I've been scoping this room, and I am going to select some people to come with me to Parliament, and no, I'm serious, this is what I do, and we'll be going up in probably about 10 to 12 days. So thank you very, very much for all and sundry being here. You have my respect and gratitude. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Oh, just a few things. I want to really thank everybody for creating this space. I said it yesterday, but it's really true. Taxation for me is it's a burning platform. And one of our, this thing about holding our power and seeing the power that we have is really important. And if you don't come from worlds of power, often you don't quite realise that you actually do have a lot. And Terese has laid out a beautiful example of how you can do an enormous amount when you believe in yourself and you elevate your voices. I'm very encouraged, actually, for example, at ACOS, our membership is growing at the moment. To your point, Pete, about joining, actually, there are more and more organisations joining ACOS at the moment, which for me is saying something, that people are seeing this about connection. And again, that value of collective action, Craig, of being together. But engaging and mobilising around tax, Peter Davidson will vouch for this, is the area where we really struggle. It is very gendered. Diversity is a real challenge. Josie and all the great women in the room, I want to say, go women.
Can I say we had slightly more women than men on our program?
Fantastic. I know, Emma. I love it. We need more people. It needs to be really inclusive in the power of the hands of the new voices, the different voices that represent the community interest. So that's a pitch from me to say if you're part of the community sector to join the tax policy network at ACOS. Don't say that's the one that I don't want to be a part of. That's the one we want everybody in. I could not resist this moment to say, as one person amongst many others who have elevated the importance of social security, we will keep going. Today, we've met with the Chief of Staff to the current government, and I have used your voices in the room with him to press the case. Thank you to the ASU that has stood up and said, we want to raise the rate of social security in this country, and to the other union members in the room, please be a part of it. Be a part of it. We want this government out the front. They should have done it this term. We tell them that. But we want this to be the hot thing to fight over, to be the first to do it. A number of the crossbench are there already. If you're a part of this election strategy, do all that you can, because on the numbers that we have seen, it is so clear. The people out there, if you promise them you'll fix this, they will vote for you. And it really means something. So we've got this moment. We don't know what will happen. An election might be called, but we have a moment to put the pressure on something which, again, was really highlighted as so crucial. The tax policy area is one, I think it'll be process, but we're deeply committed. I just want to thank you and Emma and everybody for helping to create the momentum again around this area. It's fantastic.
Thank you, Cass, and thank you and Peter and all the team at ACOS for the incredible work you've done in that space. I know you'd all like to say something. I'm afraid we're out of time, but because I do have a lot of people to thank, and I do want to talk about what's next to what Helen was talking about. So as I've been saying for the last 2 days, this is not the end of this conversation. We brought together a great number of people. All, you can't see them because of that chair, but our partners in this event, the Tax Justice Network, Oxfam, The Next Economy, Think Forward, Prosper, Get Up, Essential Media, the Community Tax Project at the University of Melbourne, New Democracy Foundation, our community, Oxfam, I said Oxfam twice, but you did do a lot of work, Josie, so that's okay. Anglicare, the Brotherhood of St Lawrence, the Uniting Church in Australia, and our very generous funding partners, Lord Mayor's Charitable Foundation, Stephen Torsey was here for most of the event, the Reichstein Foundation, Rachel Ball was here, thank you Rachel. Manifera, Harriet's still here, thank you Harriet. And Alice, who also supported us through Manifera. And triple thank you to Tracy and Sally. Sally had to leave this morning. Can we give those people a huge thanks? And thank you Democracy already, but you were also a funding supporter, so thank you. We would not be here without that level of support from these philanthropic organisations, and certainly wouldn't be here without our community partners, who many of whom put their summer holidays aside when I approached them just before Christmas and said, hey, let's do this in February, and helped us pull it together. So thank you to all of you here in the room today, Tom, Raina, Josie, Mark, Jason, whom I'm missing, Cass and Peter, and all of the team. Now, I really want to get serious now. I really need to thank the team from the Brotherhood of St Lawrence, Chris Black, Ismo, Rama, Travis McLeod, and all of the team that has been helping you out the front. Many of them are BSL people. They also helped us bring together, as did ACOS, that really important lived experience panel yesterday. And Josie, I'll say again, was instrumental in putting together the panel that you heard from today. So thank you, thank you, thank you. My thanks to Peter for everything you've done, not only in your inimitable style to bring us together with technology. We've had so much feedback from those joining us at home that they actually felt part of the event. They weren't just watching something, they were participating in something. So thank you, and thank you, Jeff and your team. You've done an incredible job, and we'll be doing this again and again. I'm getting there.
Sorry,
I'm not finished.
The tech just dropped out.
I'm almost finished. My team at Per Capita, we're a tiny, tiny team. People think we're a lot bigger than we are. We're not, we're tiny. In particular, she's not here today because she had a long planned leave and I insisted that she keep it. But Meredith Eldridge, who's our operations director, has worked tirelessly to pull this event together. The reason you're all fed, the reason that everything's designed as it is, that everyone could get online and participate, that there were taxi vouchers and travel arranged, and the catering, everything was down to Meredith and to Rebecca Connell, who's our media manager and works with Meredith, who's not only assisted with all of that, but all of the social media, all of the materials, all of the website, and all of the recording. Many of you have been out the back with the team from the Brotherhood, and Rebecca recording little messages that we're going to package up. Rebecca's done that too. So my team at Per Capita, I love you, and I could not work with it. We're all women at the moment, and I could not work without them. Margaret, Sarah, thank you for your thought leadership and your support of me. May, thank you for your endless support. And thank you all for coming along. I particularly want to make mention, lastly, of our keynote speakers. Catherine's still here, Catherine Trebek, Miranda Stewart was here yesterday, and of course Ken Henry. I approached Ken out of the blue on this. I got his email from Tom Walker, and I just sent him an email and said, "Dear Dr. Henry." He came back to within 5 minutes and said, "Yeah, I'd love to," and has been an absolute dream to deal with. Miranda gave so generously of her time in preparing that very informative talk yesterday. And Catherine, you're always an inspiration, so thanks so much for sharing your knowledge with us too. But all of you, one very last important thank you, David Morowitz, who has funded our tax survey now for 15 years, is the driving force behind the tax survey. Which gives me the confidence to know that we're doing what the Australian people want, because year on year on year, they say the same thing. So thank you, David. We wouldn't be here without you. All of you, you've all been incredible, online, in the room. We don't make change without numbers. We are many, they are few. We have to have numbers. And so whether you're a member of the Greens or the Liberal Party or the Labor Party or an independent voter or a One Nation voter, whether you're a young person or an older person, whether you're wealthy and a property investor or you're renting, whether you're in social housing or, a mansion there's probably not many people here that live in mansions, but whomever you are, we all must come together in order to make this change. And my last thanks go to those people, some of whom are still here, that brought their own stories of lived experience under this system. I think everyone agrees they were the most compelling conversations we've had over the last 2 days. One of the biggest problems we have in the management of our economy is that these voices aren't heard and aren't listened to, and the conversation's dominated by the people who want to keep the status quo. So next steps, we'll be in touch. We will be setting up a network. We will be maintaining this network and growing this network. Please reach out to us if you are here on behalf of an organisation that isn't already on that list, because we want to hear from all of you as we take the next steps out of this summit to put together our own green paper on tax reform on behalf of the community. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
And of course, there's one more thank you. So as a board member of Per Capita, I just want to share, one of the problems with running something so kick-ass as this is people think you guys must have your stuff together, have amazing resources. We are literally quarter to quarter organisation. Some of you know the incredible journey Emma's been on over the last couple of years. She turns up, she's kept this organisation going, not quite single-handedly, but almost. So my last thing, apart from thanking her for her drive and leadership to make this happen, is just to shout out that when you think of not-for-profits to partner with, it makes such a difference for us to have great partners who allow us to build a stable base to do this sort of critical thinking. So Emma, thank you so much, and give it up for the leader of Per Capita. And that's it.
Stay tuned, it's all being recorded. We'll be putting it up online next week. We'll be sending out a lot of materials, follow-up newsletters, how you can get involved, and this is going to be our focus for the foreseeable future, is creating a future for our children that is sustainable, safe and fair. Thanks everyone, bye-bye.